Welcome to the Irish NFL Show in association with QuinnBet. You're listening to our divisional round, or divisional previews even. We're pretty far away from the divisional round at this point. We're looking at the NFC West, and we're going to start, Kieran Boyle, with the San Francisco 49ers. 6-13 last year, most injured team in the league, which is, partly responsible for that record. They're dreaming of better times ahead. They're smarting. They're also looking at what, by strength of schedule, and you can take or leave that with the pinch of salt that it needs to be taken with, because it looks at historic record and not necessarily taking in what a team is going to do this year. But they're looking potentially at the easiest league schedule in the league, at least as it stands, based on last year's record, which they think is going to help them back to the top in the NFC West. Does that case stack up?
Well, they're going to need the easiest schedule, because I think this is going to be another tough year for the Niners. We talked last year, I think the year before, about windows. Don't want to labor the point, but I think the window is rapidly closing on the Niners. The loss that they had between Debo, hopefully McCaffrey can stay healthy, but his track record states that he probably won't last the whole season. Another year for Trent Williams. Can he stay healthy? He missed some time last year too, which affected their record. Kittle, it's another year with him. I just, again, we talked about some of the other teams in the West and the AFC West. I just think there's too many question marks for me with this Niners team. The Purdy contract has meant that they've had to contract in the kind of skill positions. Debo has gone to Washington, and they're kind of paper thin for me at wide receiver. Ricky Pearsall seems to be wide receiver one at this stage. At Garendo, they're going to be relying on him a little bit too. The defense, can Bosa stay healthy? I mean, they're going to rely on Gross Matos a lot. They did have a decent draft. I mean, they got Michael Williams as a defensive end. They needed him. Alfred Collins, they got as a D tackle. So again, with me and the Niners, I think there's too many kind of, is this kind of the smell test or the kind of visual test enough for you to kind of have faith in the Niners this year, despite the fact that, there's a fairly kind of even division that we're going to talk about in a little while, Rams and the Seahawks. But I just think for me, with the 49ers, a couple of years ago, they would have been the Chiefs kind of at that level and that kind of ability. But for me, I think there's too many questions with the 49ers. Purdy, I'm not sold on. I've been on the record in the past saying that I'm not the biggest Purdy fan. I got questions about Trent Williams. Can he stay healthy? Bosa, can he stay healthy? Fred Warner's really the only standout, defensive player they have after they lost all those guys at free agency. And the secondary for me is beat up. I know they got Eli Apple, who they released, but they got Jason Pinnock, Dimador Lenoir. It's something that is going to definitely be concerning for Niners fans. It'll be a better year for them 100% because they got a slightly easier record and they're going to put everything that they have in Purdy. But for me, if I was a Niners fan, I'd be a little nervous about this upcoming season with all these kind of different question marks and holes. Will Purdy be the Purdy that they want? He had a bad year last year, despite what people may say. He was down in completion percentage, yards he was down, touchdowns he was down, interceptions he was up. So all the key metrics, he didn't make the grade last year. Now I know they lost, some key players, but is Ayuk going to be healthy? There's questions about him. There's too many losses for me on the defense. A lack of depth in key positions, especially the run blocking game. Losing Charvarius Ward, Dre Greenlaw, Hufanga, even Debo. And then the question is McCaffrey's durability. That it kind of all hinges on that. So question marks everywhere you look with this Niners team. I'd be nervous. We'll talk about the finishing positions later on, but I'm not overly enthusiastic about the Niners' chances this year.
Kieran O'Donovan, the case for those who were down on the Niners would have been, kind of as Kieran Boyle has outlined it there, that you either have the quarterback or all the playmakers around Brock Purdy. You can't pay Purdy and start shaving off the playmakers and hope to get the same end result. Niners fans will tell you, and people who've been watching the team closely will tell you, we're never going to be, even with, question mark over Ayuk, Juwan Jennings injured in training. That's not looking good at the start of the season. But even with that, there's no way we're going to have as bad injury luck this season as we had last season. And one key addition, we got Robert Saleh back, and that's going to make a meaningful difference to the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. But I have to, again, I'm echoing what Kieran said. When we did our way too early predictions a few weeks ago, and that's why they are way too early. I think I certainly was quite very high on the 49ers. But as time has gone on and as the weeks have gone on, and listening to reports again on the ground, I mentioned Albert Breer a while ago. I've been listening to a lot of his training camp reports. He's making his way around the country at the moment, and he basically said exactly what Kieran is saying. A lot of the hope for the 49ers is based on when we talked about, we're talking up the Chargers, we're talking up the Broncos, but that's what people are actually seeing. Whereas the 49ers, it's hope. And yes, Christian McCaffrey he's back to his old training routine, and he's looking fit and he's looking strong, but he's gone past 30 now, a running back with
he always looks fit and strong. He's a beautiful man. He looks fit and strong right up until he gets injured in week 6. That's Christian McCaffrey's show. And
there still is the potential for him to have an MVP caliber season, which we saw 2 years ago. But again, there's a big asterisk beside it. And we talk, while we're talking up the acquisition of Dre Greenlaw and Hufanga, we have to recognize that that's a huge loss for the 49ers as well. And how do you fill those holes? And exactly as you said, Robert Saleh might be the best signing that they've made, in the offseason, because again, he might give them that kick. We talk about the transition from coordinator to coach. While I wasn't, I just wasn't sold on him as a head coach, watching Hard Knocks and watching him deal with the Aaron Rodgers situation and and all the drama. When you saw him on the sideline as the D coordinator for the 49ers, he looked like a guy that you would run through a wall for, and maybe he's the guy who will give them that kick that they need. And they do. I mean, there's undoubtedly they have talent, and they have talent on the sidelines with Kyle Shanahan, and and they have created a really strong culture. But I agree with you, Kieran. I think that as the weeks go on, I feel like there's too many ifs. There's just too many ifs with this team.
I am fascinated, though, and that's why I mentioned it at the start, to see how the Robert Saleh thing does actually pan out, because we see this over and over again, that a guy's star gets tarnished because the head coaching thing doesn't work out. It's almost like people forget how good a coordinator he was and how good his defense was to get him that job in the first place. Saw this play out, obviously, with Matt Eberflus from a Bears perspective in Chicago. I think he's a great pickup for the Cowboys. You saw what happened, both of those teams, the Jets and the Bears, when they fired those head coaches respectively during the season. Their defenses fell off a cliff, and you could actually see the impact that they were making on that side of the ball by what happened after they left. Never mind that they couldn't deal with the job and it wasn't the job for them. Those are two really outstanding coordinators, and I'm really interested to see how both of their seasons pan out.
And Connor, when Mike McDaniel gets fired later on this season, he could go back and make a really good offensive coordinator again for someone.
Yeah, we all know what prop bet Kieran O'Donovan has made in the offseason. He's piled everything on Mike McDaniel to be the first head coach fired, and I'm saying it's probably a lot of people who'll join him in that bet. Shane Brennan, are you as down on the Niners as we collectively seem to be? And, hands up, when we did our way too early picks, I was very high on them as well, but I'm looking at the cupboard looking pretty bare there, and I'm looking at the way things have been shaping up for them, and the losses, the subtractions on both sides of the ball, and I'm nervous too.
Yeah, I think when you look at the all the questionables and the injuries on the 49ers schedule, I think there's a lot of people who are sort of ask why, but I'm starting to ask why not, because I think if you look at the gap in potential, and again, I completely understand the point that Kieran and Kieran are making in terms of, so much depends on what is, but look at, I think, a few things statistically. Last year, they were the 4th best in the league when it comes to yards per game and passing yards per game, but they're 29th when it comes to actually scoring points per game. And again, a lot of that is situational. A lot of that is coaching. A lot of that is having the right talent on at the right time to get it done. Defensively, the same. 8th best when it comes to conceding yards per game, 3rd worst when it comes to points per game. And again, a lot of that is stats based on the fact they spilled the ball away. And of course, when you give away with 10-yard score, that affects those two statistics differently. But I don't know. I'm more optimistic on what the 49ers can do. Surely at some point, obviously with Robert Saleh coming in as defensive coordinator, I think they really get to grips with an area that I think has let them down in key areas, not only last year, but the previous couple of seasons as well. Interesting as well that in the first 4 players they picked in the first 100 overall in the draft were all defensive players as well. That's clearly an area they are focusing on rebuilding, because they are splashing the cash on offense, particularly on Brock Purdy. And I know, look, Ayuk is out at the moment. Juwan Jennings, we don't know. Christian McCaffrey, we don't know. Kyle Juszczyk is questionable at the moment. And they really haven't been aggressive enough in getting another wide receiver for Brock Purdy to throw to in free agency. I'm sure there was definitely plenty of even mid-range guys there that they might be able to bolster it up. But I don't know. I think the 49ers definitely can do it, especially when you look at the fact that in the division, they're generally quite good at head-to-heads. They're 12-6 against the NFC West in the last 3 years, and 3 of their losses have been the last 3 games they played against the Rams. 2 last year, which they lost in a bad season, and 1 which they lost, I think, in January 2024, when I think they were basically playing a second-string team, knowing full well that they were heading into the playoffs. They won the previous 7 games against the Rams before that, and being able to knock off the Rams is going to be key for anybody being able to take over this division. I think they can do it. My biggest question, though, isn't on the guys around Brock Purdy. It's on Brock Purdy. He's been given $53 million a year to prove that he is the future of the franchise and that he is able to carry the team himself without being the great system quarterback that a lot of people have been speaking to him of. So to me, that like more so than the players around him and the skill and all the rest that hampered them last year, because I think they've made good strides defensively. Brock Purdy, to me, is the key to whether the 49ers can win this division or not, because, as I'm sure we'll talk about later, the other 3 teams, the Rams in particular, who I would have been more certain on before I heard some things about Matt Stafford, Brock Purdy needs to realize that this is an opportunity for the 49ers to take and go out and take it. And for me, I'm actually not fully confident in his ability to do that. But for the rest of the team, I think they will probably get a bit more luck when it comes to injuries and fitness. And they might actually really be in a good chance to give it a go. So I'm more optimistic than most are on what the 49ers can do this year.